Hi again. Welcome everyone to episode 3. This is Shakila here. We have Harisha, the futurist from Singapore. I'm your own entrepreneur. And today we are going to discuss on various topics. Remember, we had episode 1, which was about motivation. Harish, episode 2, you helped us with communication and networking. This time we are getting a little more deeper. We have episode 3 with topics to cover. That's going back to your drawing board, ideation, design, research, new product versus business model. That's those are few things that Harish is going to try and give us insights upon. All over to you, Harish.
Thank you, Shakila. Great to be talking to you again. And hi, everybody.
Hi.
Pray you're keeping strong. So now we are still in a pandemic situation and far from a vaccine, which means a lot of the world is still in lockdown or quarantine or on stay home notice or uh, working from home, like here in Singapore, where there's no lockdown, but we're all working from home. So there's all sorts of disruption. Some entire industries, as we talked in the past episodes, have been pretty much virtually shut and grounded. And as they say, they've been saying all along for much of modern business history, when something fails, when something stops working, it's back to the drawing board. So now the drawing board is not exactly the school drawing board that your teachers used to write on, but or used to do your artwork on. This drawing board we're talking about is a board on which you draw your plans, right? Because whatever industry you are in, if you're watching this by now, it is because you're a startup or a small business owner and your plans have been disrupted. So you have to redraw your plans. You have to accept that. We've talked about it already in the past episodes. So what does going back to the drawing board mean? It means, firstly, craft a table, right? What is your present situation? As in, what are your current assets? What are your liabilities? What are your strengths that you can still use in this situation right now, if any, right? Or what has been lost? And for some of you, it's completely halted because you are not in a position to either produce anything or move anything or sell anything. That's okay. You're not alone. There's lots of businesses in the world like that. We've talked about it, right? You have to deal with that situation in different ways, right? Either to be able to hold off payments or have holding power or minimize your expenses, whatnot. There are various solutions, but we've already talked about that. That's remedial. Or whatever it is, you need to put all these things down on board or on a piece of paper. You need to start planning first by looking at what your present situation is, right? Your present business model that you had in your mind or that you were working on or working with until this thing happened and disrupted you, this pandemic. And then look at, okay, what perhaps you need to do now to recover. Don't think salvage, think positive, right? Don't think, okay, I need to now minimize my losses and all that. Don't think in that direction. Think about whatever you have on hand right now, what can you make the most of it with, right? In terms of how do you take an opportunity out of this situation? It's a bad adverse situation, but as a business person, you need to look for an opportunity. How you need to create an opportunity. It's not just going to land onto your lap, right? So this is what you call going back to the drawing board, where you look at, okay, where the opportunity might be. When this thing is over, where are you able to going to be able to provide something to that's going to be in demand, right? Perhaps what was previously your customer base or intended customer base may now be gone. So what's another customer base, an alternative customer base that you can perhaps serve, and how, right? So this is where you come up with ideation. You come up with ideas of, okay, who may need solutions that you, with your resources, with your assets, you are able to create, right? So this is where you need to start thinking about ideation. That's number one. Okay. So then you need to then work on these ideas by designing something. What sort of products or services with your resources or with what you have or with your strengths, what can you offer to the world that is going to be in demand after this situation is then over, right? Or maybe towards the end of this pandemic crisis or when restrictions are lifted, whenever. As soon as you're able to get back to doing business, what is it that you can capitalize on as quickly as possible to do business where you're drawing revenues? We worry about the profits later. We think about revenues, right? So what have I talked about so far? Go back to the drawing board, come up with ideas, and then design something, right? You may not be able to come up with physical models right now. You may not be able to develop a prototype unless you have a fully equipped technical equipment fitted garage attached to your home, right? Otherwise, or unless you have an exemption from wherever you are from restrictions on working in a physical space, you're still able to go to work. That's fine. Then this what I'm saying is not for you. But I'm assuming that most of you are not able to get together with your teams because of social distancing measures, and you don't have access to heavy equipment or production equipment or design tools. You don't have the capacity to draw material resources to put together physical prototypes. So, but what you can still do is design on paper or in software, 3D models, 4D models, but come up with a design. Or if it's just a service that you want to offer to someone, then come up with a chart, a flow chart, a work chart, a work process, workflow chart. Come up with something. Design what you're going to do and where it's going to create value, what sort of value it's going to create, and for whom, and how much is that going to be worth, to who are you going to be able to sell to. So you come up with the plans, right? Now, to be able to do all these things, right? So after you go to the drawing board to list down what you've done, or even before you do that, right? Before you get into ideation and waste your time with it, before you get into designing something and waste your time with it, first know what is going to be the demand out there. What is the world going to need? And you do this with research. And the sort of research you do right now, right, is not university academic research. You do research in the form of reading, 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 and number four, yes, you got it right, reading again. Keep reading, right? And I don't mean read novels, don't read movie reviews, don't read gossip magazines or tabloid papers. Read mainstream news, global news. Don't read your local news, right? Don't don't constrain your mindset or your horizon. Think big. Go to the BBC website, CNN website, Reuters website, CNBC website. Some websites may require a subscription if you can afford it. Fine. Otherwise, there are plenty of free global news websites. Surf the net, look for news, see how different people in different parts of the world, different businesses, different large corporations, organizations are being affected, right, by this pandemic, this crisis. What has been disrupted? Where? What sort of industries have been disrupted? How can you be part of the solution? How can you help someone's recovery process? How can you supply something that has now been disrupted and perhaps that supply will be in short, right? After this thing opens up, after things improve, organizations may have a shortage in something. You may be able to fill the gap, right? So you need to think along these lines, and you get these thoughts, you get these ideas by first knowing what's happening out there right now. Don't read about the past, right? Don't read about speculation. Read about what's happening right now, right? And then based on that, you see, I'm teaching you how to be a futurist. Based on what's happening right now, you work out what is likely going to be in demand and what's likely to sell later that you will be able to offer and sell with your resources, with your strengths, with your expertise, right? So that's research. So you do your research with reading, go back to the drawing board, see what you can offer with what you found about what is likely to be in demand. Then you come up with ideas, maybe brainstorm with people you know or people you work with or who are part of your team, right? Brainstorm with family members perhaps who are working in different jobs in different industries, right? Like my wife's an accountant, so I bounce off ideas with her, and she works in a particular industry, so I know what they are facing right now. They're heavily impacted as well. So this is how you come up with ideas for new types of products and services, and then you draw up plans. Can't come up with a physical model, you can't come up with a sample, fine. At least come up with a nice plan. Is it feasible? Is it something within your means that you can produce and deliver, right? If not, keep going back to the drawing board, keep working on it. Now you have the time to do it, right? You're stuck at home. You can't be productive in many other ways. You can't do active sales. You can't do active production and active delivery. But these sort of things you have time to do it. So when this thing's over or subsiding, you can hit the ground running and you won't be playing catch up. You'll be ahead, right? So this is what you need to be doing. The
Fantastic.
final.
So what I sorry, was it like I thought it
No, so
was
I was getting the last stage because all these things are ultimately leading to either new products or new business models. But it's okay.
yeah,
You can continue.
I was just coming to that. That the entire activity that we need to do is perhaps a life cycle in any business. I think it's just that right now we are forced to do this, I believe, right? So I see that you have addressed how we need to really go back to the drawing board, look into the present scenario, and draw up the new scenario, for which your reading is very important, which means your research is the key right now, right? So your research is the key, and then you go back to your drawing room, you sit across your team virtually, or you want to first do it yourself and present it. Remember, we spoke communication just about last week. And then we have an ideation session. Again, it could be with the team, or it could be something that you do and then present it as a leader, taking up the top spot. And you can design or you can redesign. I think that's another thing. Maybe some of the services, what you said, flowchart, you want to revisit, is probably just redesigning your business and service and the product for the present day scenario, and putting it out there for the market, saying we still work. And of course, with all this, then comes looking at capitalizing the market. It's not the profit we are looking at. We are looking at sustainability. I think that is the word. Is how do you sustain? How does your organization sustain? How does your team sustain? And how can the entire working model go from one step to another step? Because I think we are back to baby steps, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I understand in today's session. So, is there any example that you might want to give that you have read of late, Harish? Maybe just about maybe today's paper, yesterday's paper, something that you thought, okay, that person is doing it the right way. I mean, just asking.
I will not quote anything right now at this point in time, Shakila. I mean, different people are doing different things, but I will not take a liberty to answer that question or comment about that at this point in time because, um, I mean, to be very honest with you, very, very brutally honest with you, these are times of ambiguity, right? And even if there are certain ideas that are working out there, um, it's let it's best to leave it to people who are working on them to just try it for themselves because we are in that frozen state still, right? However you want to put things, the world is in a frozen state. It's about, okay, how do we contain the damage, right?
Right.
That's where we are at this point in time. So but what one very important thing you said was also not just design but redesign. So it's a good bit of clarification because you might not have to entirely change your product offering or product range, right, or your entire business model, but you may have to tweak it because, okay, some things are definitely going to change in terms of, okay, first and foremost, pricing, which means this is something I've extensively spoken about offline through other platforms and through other channels, because right now there's insecurity. Consumer spending is definitely going to change around the world, any country in the world. This is unprecedented the way this impact has happened in modern times, right? So when you talk about consumer spending, um, even upstream, even if you don't deal directly with consumers, you need to think of your pricing very differently now. Otherwise, you're going to be caught off guard. So this is the time to think about these sort of things. So how do you replan your production? How do you replan your sourcing, right? Redesign your sourcing, redesign your production methods to cut costs. Redesign your labor, your internal work processes to capitalize on your productivity better, right? Your efficiencies, cost efficiencies better, so that you can pass on the savings. You can still remain profitable because others can remain profitable by buying from you. Because at the end of the day, some consumer somewhere is buying an end product, right, downstream, that he or she thinks that he or she is still willing to spend on, a certain amount. So you need to be a bit careful about these things. But all these things now work if you can keep on top of things by continuing reading, continuing your research non-stop. Do that every day, right? Even as you're drawing up new plans, you're working on a drawing board, you're coming up with new ideas and redesigning stuff or designing new stuff altogether. Don't stop your research. Keep on top of things so that when this is over, you're still relevant. Your mindset is relevant, and what you have to offer is relevant.
Awesome. So I have a good takeaway for today in terms of rethinking how the business process is going to work. And I also feel, this is just to add as a footnote to this conversation. I think if one can look into the complete business operations, and if one can sit back and do the restructuring on the drawing board, or analyze, I think there is something that they can arrive at, which is called as institutional void. That particular void is what you are going to answer when you redesign. Just think of this question, and I'm sure by applying all these things, you'll be able to identify the void that is in your institution, or you'll come up finding out an answer for an institutional void elsewhere, where you can be the service provider or you can be the product deliverer, right? Fantastic. Okay, that was an amazing insight.
But so to the last part, right, when we talk about new products and new business models, right? So products could be goods and services, right? So this is usually what happens is when you start a company, you're thinking we're going to expand later, we'll offer more stuff later. But what happens with a lot of organizations, they become single product or single line companies for a very long period of time because they get so busy with what they initially start with. They get stuck in it and they just get stuck firefighting every day to keep that running and alive. We talk about profit after that point, but usually what happens is, okay, now that I've started this, I've invested this much financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, in every sense, right? I've invested my people into it. Now to keep this together, this is working, we keep it working somehow, right? Just to stay afloat, even if I'm not taking home a single cent, even if I remain in red for 5 years, but let's keep it running this way, right? But this is an opportunity, this inadvertent freeze that we are in, right, to think about the other things you can offer. But at the same time, what happens is, let's talk about a difference between two types of artists: a decent artist who's talented and a good artist who is talented, but not just talented, he's very well talented, right? So the decent artist who is somewhat talented will come up with a good masterpiece, good to look at, people will admire it. And then every time you ask an artist to come up with something new, it always looks the same as the first piece of work. Even after an artist has worked on 100 different works, they all look pretty much the same. There's not much of a difference, not much of a variance, right? This is what you need to avoid at this point in time, because the first and foremost, the reason why we are having this conversation is because this time demands variance in thinking. So if you go to your drawing board, if you come up with new ideas and you come up with new designs and new products or product changes and product tweaks, and they all look the same, your work processes, your costing, your pricing, your offering, the consumer in mind, customer in mind, clientele in mind, market in mind, they all look the same as what you had before the pandemic. If your demand is still going to be there and you're still going to be sellable with that after this is over, perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. But if it's not, your research is telling you otherwise, that means you need to start doing something about your thinking. You need to tweak your thinking first. You need to redesign your thinking first before you work on your new product and your new business model. When I say new product and new model, I don't mean you have to completely dump what you're selling before, but you might have to make tweaks. That's what I'm trying to talk about here today. But that said, a good artist is one where he comes up with just 20 pieces, not 100, but all 20 of them are spectacular. They're brilliant. They're masterpieces, but they all are completely unique in their own. They have no similarity with each other, right? So come up with something that looks different, right? Necessary, not just for the sake of it, but because it feeds and it fits into what is going to come at the end of this crisis, right? And how do you know what is going to come at this crisis? Stay on top of things by reading, getting information on industries that you are interested in, right? You have interest in, on the sort of organizations that are buyer organizations or supply organizations. Keep on top of things. See what's changing,
Yeah,
where the prices are going to shoot up.
we should get more into how we are going to segment the market in our one of the episodes. I think that's where you're heading right now, because then it will
I'm
be
just
always.
touching on it. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that you need to be
So
careful, right? Because if your plans look exactly the same as what they were before the pandemic, if they're still going to work, if you can honestly tell yourself that in an educated fashion, that's great. But for a lot of industries out there, not every industry perhaps, but for a lot of industries, the conditions are changing all over the world in different ways, right? That's why Shakila asked a question right now. I did not dare to answer it because lest someone holds my word to it. The problem right now is we are in a state of ambiguity like never before. So for every country market, every city market around the world, every industry, right, every type of product line you may be in, things are changing to different degrees in different ways. For some markets, for some countries, some businesses, what they've been doing before, it's completely unaffected even today as I speak, right? But it's not the same for everybody. So you have to be a bit careful. So you have to be very honest with yourself as well. So are you really working on something unique and different? Are you challenging your own thought? Or are you just trying to do the create the same wheel in a different way and then hoping it will work, right? So you need to answer that question to make whatever we talked about today fruitful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harish. I think there was a lot of insight. We kind of covered how to relook into business and business operations to be prepared for the what to say release of lockdown and comeback scenario. That's what I would call. Thank you so
Yes.
very much. You have a great day. We'll be looking forward for future episodes with you. We've slowly bring a great day. Bye bye.